face-to-face very soon. That's the ultimate idol. Ika nga, dalawa lang naging boss niyan. Pareho pang legendary sa mundo. So, well, me, I'm a service guy, and in the video game industry in the Philippines, I've been serving the association for over 10 years. Over 10 years. The 10 years I served the association was as president. And after 10 years, they decided my association friends could not kick me out, so they kicked me upwards. So now they're chairman. So I still am quite active in the industry. So let me share my screen with you as I tell you more about the video game industry in the Philippines, because that's one thing. A lot of Filipinos are surprised that there is even a video game industry in the Philippines. Usually kasi ang mainit lang. Like when pagtanong ni Monique kanina, Mobile Legends, Valorant, COD, lahat yan. Yan naman na alam ng mga karamihan ng tao. Yung mga games na nilalaro sa Pilipinas talaga. Pero lahat ng minention ni Monique kanina, lahat yon wala akong kinalaman doon. Ibig sabihin, I was never part of their production team. So I'll share with you a bit of my experience, and then hopefully I can share with you some tips, some tricks, just in case you want to engage and challenge yourself to be part of the growing video game industry of the Philippines. So give me a minute. So first, let's see. I'm going to show you a YouTube clip of what I mostly do during the day. Here we go. So proudly, I share that clip because it was part of a game that we just finished around almost 2 years ago, called Gears of War 5. And that scene, or that map that you just saw, the amazing thing about it is Filipinos made it. In a console game or a AAA game, it takes hundreds of people, to do a project. And that's why I like using that scene and that map. Kachamba chamba, it was my team from the Philippines who was assigned to do that entire map. So I hope that gives you an idea on the global class level of quality of our talent in video games. It's hard to show the engineering expertise, but it's easier to show the art expertise of the Philippines coming from my eyes. And so next. All right. So to tell you about our video game industry and myself, so I do work for a studio. The studio I work for is called Synergy 88. Medyo bata pa ang Synergy 88. It's 6 years old. So this is only the second studio I've been working for. And now for Synergy, my role is studio director. And most of what I do under Synergy 88 is very, very art heavy. It's very, very art heavy. It's mostly about the 3D arts. And if you've noticed during this pandemic, during this lockdown, ang swerteng negosyo talaga is everything that was digital. It's everything that was online that actually had growth. And the amazing thing about video games, since the entire world was trapped in their houses for over a year. Can you believe that the video game industry garnered 3 years worth, 3 years worth of new consumers, of new users? So actually now, the biggest games in the world of last year just got bigger. So since the games are getting bigger, there's more funding. Can you imagine that? During the pandemic, more funding was received for newer projects, the next sequel of a project, because video games actually flourished. It wasn't struggling during the pandemic, which is good for people like us. That's why, I was very excited when they asked me to talk. So Y4IT, because you guys are students and you're now trying to chart your path in life. And we just proven, the guys doing online work in the digital sphere, that we are pretty much pandemic proof. Just for that, just for that, maybe you should really take a serious look at your options. We don't know what the future will hold in terms of health and health insecurity. So again, I hope you take a lot of time and take it seriously about listening to the experiences of the speakers of your event, and jot down the tips and tricks. You might like some. So on my part, I've been able to be part of a few AAA games way back when, over a decade ago. I was doing games for PlayStation. I was part of a team that did some work for Uncharted 3 and the famous Last of Us as well. My name is there. Most of you, siguro, at your age range, what you experienced or what you hear about nowadays is the sequel. So I was part of the first one. And then another globally winning game was Witcher 3. So we had a small part of that as well. And the very, very famous Cyberpunk, our team had a part in that as well. But we really made our mark for Synergy. We really made our mark when we hit the deal with Microsoft, with Xbox. And we started off with Gears of War 4. And eventually, as the years rolled by, we were we already became the major team for Gears 5 and its additional game, additional DLC called Hivebusters. So yeah, imagine in a decade, I've been able to be part of these global projects. And what we proved is it doesn't matter where you are from. Global talent is global talent, as long as you do some things well. So this picture, it's actually a snapshot I took of a conference in 2018. It's one of the biggest video game conferences. And why I'm sharing it with you, this was a slide used by one of the employees of our client. And he goes, well, our teams are scattered around the world. And it was projected on screen. And it was, all these countries had these yellow dots. Those were where the teams were. There were engineering teams, QA teams all around the world. And I just became so happy because when that yellow dot fell on the Philippines, I could stand up and claim, that's my yellow dot. We are the first Microsoft certified provider of art in the Philippines. And till this day, I'm so tickled and proud that we did that because look, we're part of the Microsoft map. But even if we do AAA, Synergy 88 is part of a conglomerate of companies. We even do games locally, and some of you might have heard, and this will be a surprise to a lot of people, that it was actually us who were behind this little chain of games for Will to Play. So as everyone knows, Willie is one of the most famous TV personalities we have. He has a daily show. And it gratifies a lot of its users with gifts almost on a daily basis. So our solution was to enable his fans and followers to keep on playing games even after the TV show through a mobile platform. We do have a lot of users right now, and it's still rising. And as an IT person, I'd like to share with you a simple strategy on how we did this. Now, take it to heart if you're in IT and you're going to develop applications or programs. That is very, very important to learn how to discern the approach, how to investigate and, come up with practical solutions when given a task. Now, this one is supposed to be played by Filipinos in the Philippines. And the Philippines, one thing that we know about the Philippines is our infrastructure is very challenged. Our internet is not the best. And again, most phones in the mass market are on the lower end, limited yung storage nila, and it's prepaid. So very, very limited yung mga capacities nila. So we had to design this platform because it had to be usable for the fans of Willie, which is the fans of Willie are 10 million, 10 million. So when we were designing it, I had to push and say that, whatever we do, the end product should hover around only 50 megabytes, because that, I believe, is the most palatable or more acceptable file size when you're actually pushing games to the Filipinos. And these are very casual games. We're not talking about Mobile Legends or anything like that. Because Mobile Legends, that's really for mga esports aficionados. But this one is for the casual players. There are much more casual players than anyone else, in games right now. So talaga, this should be suited to the average phone in the Philippines. And surprisingly, okay, when we put it out there a couple of months ago, it already had 5 games inside. Once you download it, a single download, and you open the Will to Play application, there are already 5 games inside. What's wonderful about that is, even though it had 5 games, it's still megabytes. All right, so it comes with it. It comes with it. Hopefully, you'll learn about that as time goes by. In video games, we're kind of different. We're kind of the oddball in technology. Some people call us weird. Sige, tanggapin namin yon. Because the way we use technology is basically for entertainment. So in our team, we pretty much need people who are either left brain or right brain. So here, this is something I just snatched out of the internet. When you say left brain, you are the most logical. You plan things out in great detail. Hopefully, you are very math and science minded. And for the right brain, here's where the art people come from. They're really focused on creating things from scratch. Their imagination soars, and they invent things. They prefer storytelling. So you need these 2 main sections when you're doing a video game, whether it's AAA, whether it's mobile, whether it's PC. These are what you do. So even though this is Y4IT, I do expect that if we were to be in one room all together, I would ask you guys, are you left brain or your right brain? I'm pretty sure we'd probably have an even division in the room. Usually that is the case. Again, even under an IT umbrella, there are some people who really feel creative. They'll be more prone to the arts, and then some will probably be more prone into the engineering or the development side of things in video games. And there's really no secret. We don't write books. We're not very academic, but through our experience, these are the very, very general steps that we want to share with you if you want to embark on a career in video games. Again, this is very different. Parents usually don't like their children entering video games because there's a veil of mystery behind it. People think that all we do every day is play. They don't understand that what we do is actually real work, and it's all about development. Really, it's a hard job. It's a hard job, and it's quite challenging. And actually, we don't need a whole lot of people. We don't need a whole lot of people. We just need a special few, and maybe that's you. So if that's you, listen up. Now, if you did embark on that career and you had for example, you took a game course, because we do have, for the last 10 years, we've had a game design and development course in the Philippines. And so when you go to the workforce, first tip is get exposed to a lot of different projects. Make sure after one project is done, try to be part of another team that's doing another task, especially if you're an engineer. Maybe you start off being with a front end developer. Maybe try back end as well. Do that. Do the first year. Try and get as many projects as you can. Next, again, work in different teams. There's a lot of things. It's a lot of things that has to be developed when you're doing video games. It's not it's not just straight coding. There's a lot of things you have to consider because we use things like physics or math. How to use all that in a game scenario is pretty fascinating, and it takes a lot of getting used to. So exposing yourself into different teams will give you, a lot of that exercise, kind of brain exercise that you need to actually finish and make a game fun. Next, sing and shout. Now, I just try to make light of this because there's a tendency of a lot of Filipinos not to say anything, not to react when they see something wrong. Now, even though you're a first year developer and you see something wrong in the production, don't be afraid to bring it up to your team lead because it might just be a mistake. So it's very, very important that you don't just keep your head down and just do your work. Hindi ganun eh. Imagine that you are part of the team. If you see something wrong, some formula, some code, which is looking like spaghetti at this point, please sing and shout about it to your team members, to your team lead. This is very, very important. And, this will surprise you when you work with foreign teams. It's like that. There's a lot of chatter when they're developing. It's not actually quiet. It's part of the creative process, even in engineering. And the next one is absolutely funny. Get lazy. Lazy in a sense that when you're programming, for games, you're going to find a lot of repetitive actions, a lot of loops, and your job as a growing developer is to cut most of that out, is to actually eliminate a lot of the garbage that it takes to produce a single action. Okay, that's why we say get lazy. Take out much of the spaghetti in the garbage that's in the way when you're making a game. And usually it's only the more experienced people who can do this. All right, so get lazy. Now, once you've gotten this sort of experience and expertise, the next challenge we have for you, at this point, maybe you've spent 1 year, 1.5 years, maybe 2 developing games. And on the next stage, you'll have to lead. You'll have to lead a small team. This is what we push you for. When you're leading, a lot of new things will come out. You'll find yourself that you're pushed to communicate even better and farther than you've ever been. You're going to be forced to do that. The responsibility, the mantle of responsibility that falls to you when you're leading a team, it's real. And it will grow you up. It won't kill you. Don't worry. It won't kill you. It will make you stronger. And then when you're used to training, training other people, new employees or old employees that join your team, and you need to share the learnings that you got from 2 projects ago, then you can train them to be lazy as well. You need to grow up your team members to be as good as you, maybe even better than you. Don't worry, you won't lose your job. You'll only get a stronger and stronger team. And studio bosses will see that. That makes you indispensable. And then also understand that in development, there's always continuous learning. It doesn't matter if you're an engineer or a 3D artist or a 2D artist. Keep it in your head that you're never truly a master. Technologies change, games change, and you have to continue your learning. You have to be thirsty for everything that's new, that's coming up, and the future holds for video game entertainment. You have to be abreast on the latest change in technology. So accept that. Take new lessons, experiment with new software, do new codes, look at up and coming game engines. Look at the works of other experts around the country, around the world, even. All right. And then once you're up there, maybe 4 or 5 years, maybe even 6 years down the line, and you become a senior developer, by this time, we hope that you become a master of communication and storytelling. A master of communication, storytelling. These are the architects of development that they could actually design and digest what the client needs for a game. And at this point, as a master communicator, you would be able to empathize and believe with your client, that this game will rock, that this game will be entertaining, that this game will rake in the awards and the profit. And then you have to get that storytelling talent and share it down the line with your team members, whether it's in the Philippines or around the world. Sadly, not a lot of people are talented in doing this. Usually, it's the more senior people who can do this. But aim for this: a master of communication, a master in storytelling. But before we get here, we have to actually jump back. We forgot there are prerequisites before you go into the game development business. The prerequisites are: if you're a developer, if you want to be a developer, you got to be good in physics, math, these things. You're not just coding. You have to add these things on your weaponry. If you're on the art side, you have to learn about things like anatomy, architecture, mechanics, because you'll be building worlds with us. You'll be building the most fabulous buildings, the weirdest crafts, vehicles, costumes, weapons, name it. So your mind has to be really open to these things. Again, for developers, another tip: do not be a slave to the engine. Now, in developing video games, we have free software out there, free engines, but do not be a slave to them. Nowadays, people can actually create simple games by simply dragging and dropping. And unfortunately, some kids graduate college thinking that the ability to drag and drop credits them to become and be called a developer. No, you're not. Sadly, you're not. You know, doing the templates and the drag and drops, that's really for mostly for the amateurs. If you want to join the industry, to the next one, you have to meet your brain and learn how to code. You gotta do it. You learn how to code. And for game development, my biggest suggestion is to learn the C's. C++, the oldest languages out there, the most basic. But once you learn C, it unlocks your brain, and it will make you capable of using most other software out there in the universe. You just need that training in your head through learning C++, and you can appreciate the others. Okay, there's a question here. Yeah, so there's two popular engines in the world right now. Unity. Definitely, Unity is being used by 64% of developers around the world. And the others, especially in AAA, what I do for Xbox or PlayStation, some of us use Unreal. Okay, so for Unreal uses C++, and Unity uses C Sharp. So that's why I remind you that if you need to learn these things, C++ or C Sharp. Very, very important. Please don't even apply if you don't know it. You're wasting your time. You're wasting hours as well. Another tip: master one, learn three. Now, once you master C++, maybe you have to learn three others. Maybe you have to learn three others that you need to build a database. You need to learn more about the backend, how you're going to store all that information when you're playing a game. So keep that, as I said, you got to keep on learning, keep on chugging along. Master one, learn three. While you're a student, enjoy your capstone. Make something real. Actually pick good members to be part of your team. Take it seriously, your capstone. Believe me, if you do your capstone well, you can bring that experience with you throughout your career. A lot of people I know around the world, I'm in late age already. There's always reference to what they did during their thesis or capstone. Very, very important. If you do the game engine, a math engine when you're in college, that will bring you places. Believe me, it will bring you places. The next, take your internship seriously. Please, it's for me, it's like winning a job. So, come on time and produce, and it's different. Internship is not, it's not like school anymore. It's really, we're going to treat you as if it was real work. So take that seriously as well. If we tell you that your internship takes 6 months, take it. We have reasons for that. Next, if you want to be a true game developer, join the game jams. Every year there are game jams in the Philippines, and this is a global thing. Please join. The social interaction will do you good. You got to meet other people. That's required. You have to learn how to work in a team. And there will be other jams within the year. Please join them. It will teach you how to compete. And if you cannot compete, you cannot make great games. It's all about games at this point. So jam on. Next, last, if you are taking a game course, is polish your portfolio. Whether you're engineering, you're an artist, make sure you have a very, very strong portfolio, because that's your biggest weapon in landing a good internship or a good job. Okay, so that's it. That's pretty much it. Those are the best tips, I guess, that we could share with you. So enjoy. So definitely, I hope I have amused you for the last 20 minutes or lumagpas na ako. But if there's anything else, you can always reach me on Facebook or to these kind people in Y4IT. Maraming salamat. Monique, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Alvin Huban. Thank you so much. Yeah, our speaker was able to answer most of the questions there in the chat box. So thank you very much. See you later in the panel discussion. All right, so coming next, our next speaker was a software engineer and technical lead manager for more than 8 years at Google Mountain View. Leaving the company just this May of 2021, she is now pursuing her own software projects in e-commerce. Prior to her time at Google, she also worked as a software engineer at Northrop Grumman, a multinational aerospace and defense company at NASA JPL in Pasadena, and at a few startups that all exited successfully. Here to talk about working at Big Tech, Ms. Charmaine Liu.
Hi there. Let me share my screen. Okay. Sorry, I'm confused. Let me just share my screen. Okay, I think I just did that. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, let me make sure. Okay, great. Thank you, Monique, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Magandang gabi po sa akin dito sa California. It is my pleasure to be here today with all of you to share my experiences of what it is like to work at one of the big software companies. But before I go there, I'd like to share with you a story that reminded me of when I first thought about working at a software company. It was the summer of high school graduation. A friend and I were chatting while walking up Session Road in Baguio City. In that conversation, I thought to ask, after finishing school and starting work and all of that, what is your ultimate career dream? What would you hope to accomplish after all that schooling? She told me what she hoped to do and it was a pretty big dream. I was actually blown away. Then she turned to me and asked me the same question. And I said, I wanted to work for Microsoft. This was in 1997. The internet was just starting, and Google did not even exist. Working for Microsoft was not something that felt achievable to me when I said that. I just remembered reading the story of how Bill Gates started Microsoft and is one of the biggest software companies in the world. At that time, it felt more of a lofty goal. And since she and I were talking about big dreams, so why not? I had no clue where to start or how to get there, but I kept the idea nonetheless. So the takeaway I'd like you to have from the story is that it's okay to dream big. Even when you don't quite know how to get there, let that be your North Star as you progress in your career. So a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Baguio City. After high school, I moved to California, and I now reside in the Bay Area with my husband and kids. I completed my primary and secondary schooling in the Philippines. The summer after high school graduation, I immigrated to the US to join my family, who moved to California a few years earlier. I completed my bachelor's in computer science and engineering at UCLA. And while working full-time, I pursued and completed my master's in computer science at USC. Here's a snapshot of my career. At my last year at UCLA, I worked as an academic part-time at NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory. After college, I worked as a software engineer at Northrop Grumman. And then after that, I was interested in startups. So I worked at a few of them for about 45 years. And then in 2012, I interviewed at Google and ultimately joined the company in that same year. In May of 2021, I turned in my resignation in order to pursue one of my longtime interests of starting my own software company. Together with 3 other people, I am now building an online service in the e-commerce space. So now that you know a little bit about me and my background, I'll continue on to the main topic of what it's like to work at a big company, a big tech company. So I was at Google for about 8.5 years and worked on 3 different products. That's Google My Business, Shopping, and Photos. So I came in as a software engineer at the Google My Business product. I was basically a full stack engineer there, even though I was hired into the team as an iOS engineer. I had strong interest in learning the server side of things. And so I also started creating and implementing the front-end APIs that the mobile app was talking to. I learned to deploy my code on the Google infrastructure, which means I had to understand the deployment configuration and infrastructure, integrate the server monitoring systems, and many other things. That's one of the things that Google generally looks for in a candidate, is the ability to adapt and quickly get up to speed with any technology a project uses or needs. Google Shopping was the second product I worked on, where I was also primarily working on the iOS app, but also implementing the server API changes. This was also the time where I went on leave for 8 months with my first child, then went and got promoted within 4 months of coming back from leave. Going for my first promotion was a positive experience for me as a woman and a first-time mother at Google, because my career progression was not impacted despite taking a long time off to have a child. At least 6 months. Then a committee would review the evidences and make a decision. Applying for a promotion can be hard and can be a source of stress for most, but once you get it, it's worth it. So I'm going to take a break from the career stuff and talk a little bit about the other fun perks of working at Google. I can only mention a few of them because there are just really too many to mention. So the campuses have many restaurants where the employees have a pick of the type of food they want to eat. And I'm referring to choices such as whether to have an omelet for breakfast, or sushi for lunch, or Korean barbecue for dinner. Then in the afternoon, choose whether to have a matcha latte or a non-fat sugar-free vanilla latte for your drink. There are also many amenities on site, such as gyms, swimming pools, tennis courts, and many more. This makes it very convenient to take on sports or hobbies. I, in particular, had taken tennis classes in the middle of my day that are offered on site. I had also learned how to cook by taking an 8-week cooking program offered for free by the kitchen staff at one of the Google cafes. The other non-tangible perks of working there is that you also get to work with really smart people on large-scale problems. Most have advanced degrees or come from the top universities in the world. The other perk I also really like is the community. There are so many internal groups on different topics, such as parenting, being a new mom, being a woman engineer, or just connecting with other Filipinos at Google. You can develop friendships through there, and you can also tap into the knowledge of the community, which are generally helpful. So continuing on to the career stuff, one of the roles I had at Google is an iOS tech lead. At a high level, these 4 things are mostly my responsibilities. The main thing I notice about managing that is different compared to other companies is that the relationship between the manager and report is generally collaborative. As a manager, I wouldn't just tell my reports what to work on. I would also seek their input on what projects they want to work on. It is also generally frowned upon at my org for managers to be micromanaging, telling the reports what and how to do their projects in detail. In addition, coaching a report to grow professionally is also considered part of the manager's role. As a software engineer, the diagram here is generally the life cycle of a project. I would start with a design doc that describes the problem I am tackling and discuss in detail the different solutions to the problem. I would share this document with other engineers and stakeholders for feedback and comments. Typically, there's also a design review meeting attended by senior engineers and domain experts. In that meeting, I would be presenting my solutions, and people would ask questions and point out things to make sure all cases have been considered. This generally helps uncover issues and vet the solution works well before starting the actual implementation. This helps avoid wasting weeks or months going down an incorrect route. Implementation is the next one. This is the part where you actually start coding, and the code is broken down in chunks sent for code review. As part of that, unit tests are also required before sending the code out for review. These unit tests are automatically run for any commits that touches that part of the code in order to catch regressions. The next part is going through the cycle of QA testing, where a QA person would manually test the features and file bug reports. In this part, you'd also write a test document for the different test cases that the QA team would go through. And when the feature is ready, the last step is a gradual rollout. What this means is that the feature is enabled for a small subset of users. I would typically start with 1% of the user base. In the case of photos that has at least 1 billion users, that means enabling the feature for 10 million accounts. These are chosen at random. I would then go through the cycle of checking the metrics, analyzing the server logs for any issues, and checking out the server graphs for the system health. If everything looks good, then I'd roll it out some more, monitor the servers, and logs again before rolling out to more users. This is generally one of the reasons why when Google publicly releases a feature, it takes some time for everyone to be able to access it. Also, as part of launch planning, there are contingency plans in place and steps of how to roll it back in case there are issues. There are also typically on-call folks that the system automatically notifies for unexpected server behaviors. And then the cycle repeats for a new project. So an example of a project I worked on in Google Photos is this memory located at the top of the app. This project was about grouping your photos based on a particular topic and generating a memory for it. For instance, being in a beach or in the playground, or in the case of this example, grouping all the photos related to being in the woods. This feature is quite involved because what it is that it basically tries to find all your photos, analyze each of them, and determine what the topic is of that photo. The first part about the work involved here is the AI component around it. It tries to figure out signals from the photos that would indicate the high likelihood of it being about the woods. The signals should be smart enough to avoid false positives, such as including photos that just happen to have trees or many plants around it. Second, you would also want to exclude photos that are not visually pleasing. For instance, if they are blurry or the person in the photo is cut off. These photos, you would also want to exclude them. Another part to this is writing an algorithm that is efficient and fast, because the algorithm is analyzing each photo in an account to figure out which ones to include in the memory. So in my account, I probably have more than 10,000 photos. And you can just imagine that if there are thousands of photos in an account, multiply that with the billion users that Google Photos have. That's a lot of processing time needed to be able to do this. And so you wouldn't want to take months before your feature becomes available to all your users. Hence, it becomes absolutely necessary that your code is efficient and optimal to support the user base of the product. Okay, I think I only have 3 minutes. I'll try to go through this last part quickly. So now that I've given you an idea of what it is like to work at Google and the types of project you can work on, the last topic I want to talk about is the interview process for software engineering. Most companies do the same thing. The technical interview tends to be very algorithmic and tests on computer science fundamentals. So the picture at the top tends to be what the phone interview screening looks like. Basically, the interviewer, you'll be talking on the phone with the interviewer, and there's like a shared document for you to type in your answer. They do expect you to come up with a solution, a working solution to the problem in that interview. And then the one at the bottom, the one with the whiteboard, that is what the on-site interview would look like, where basically there's an interviewer on the desk, and then you'll be drawing on the whiteboard the solution to the question. I'll skip through some of these of what I was about to say, but one thing I want to point out here is that I added some resources here for anyone who would like to, when you need to prepare for an interview, a technical interview. The book, one is a book, and one is an on-site platform, a website, so the book is Cracking the Coding Interview book. There's about 189 programming questions there. And then the website is like just many different problems that you can practice on. So we're at the end of my talk. I hope that my presentation and the stories of my experience working at Google had been enjoyable and informative. I am very grateful to be here. And thank you, everybody. If you have any questions or follow-up, if you'd like to reach me after this talk, feel free to email me at the email address that I have on the slide. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Miss Charmaine Lu. All right. So later, Miss Charmaine Lu is part of our panel discussion. So any questions related to her discussions will be answered there. All right. Okay. So before we head on over to our break, I would also like to thank our sponsors for making Y4IT 2021 happening. All right. So thank you to ASUS, Paymaya, Smart PLDT, Oracle, Linux Professional Institute, Palo Alto Networks, Microgenesis Business Systems, Archer M Security, Empire Locks, Felta Multimedia Inc., Panadera de Pantoja, and Teleperformance.